So, I've got something super exciting for you today on QuickSpeak English. Um, you know how traveling can be kind of, well, overwhelming when you're not sure about the language?
Oh my goodness, absolutely. And you know what? This is actually one of my favorite topics to talk about because I've been to gosh, I think it's about 30 different countries now.
That's incredible. And I know you've picked up so many useful phrases along the way, right?
Totally. Totally. And the thing is, well, I've learned that there are these absolutely essential phrases that can make or break your travel experience. You know what I mean? Like regardless of where you're heading, these are the golden tickets to getting around.
So today we're going to dive into all those super helpful travel phrases that our listeners can use anywhere in the world.
Exactly. Exactly. And I'm really excited because we're going to cover everything from getting through the airport, checking into hotels, ordering food, you name it. Because, having these phrases in your back pocket, it's like having a superpower when you're traveling.
That's exactly what our listeners need, especially those who might be planning their first big trip abroad.
Oh, absolutely. And you know what's really cool? These phrases. They're not just about communication, they're about feeling confident. Like when you know exactly what to say in any situation, it completely changes your whole travel experience.
So let's dive into those airport phrases first because that's where most journeys actually begin, right?
Oh, yes, yes. And, and you know what? The airport can be probably the most stressful part of traveling because everything's moving so fast. You know what I mean? You need to know exactly what to say and when to say it.
What would you say are the absolute must-know phrases for getting through the airport smoothly?
So the first thing you definitely need to know is how to ask about your gate. You can simply say, "Excuse me, where is gate B12?" And what's really important here is to always include the gate letter and number, you know?
And what about when you need to find your luggage?
Oh, that's such a good question. The phrase you want to use is, "Where is the baggage claim?" And sometimes you might need to say, "I can't find my luggage," or "My luggage hasn't arrived." Because, these things happen more often than we'd like.
What about getting around after the airport, like taking a taxi or finding public transport?
Right, right. So for taxis, it's super simple. You just need to know, can you take me to, and then whatever your destination is. And what's really important is knowing how to ask, how much will it cost? Because, you don't want any surprises.
That's so helpful. And what about buses and trains?
Oh my goodness, yes. So for public transport, you absolutely need to know phrases like, where can I buy a ticket? And which line goes to? And here's a super useful one. Does this bus stop at? Because, there's nothing worse than getting on the wrong bus, you know what I mean?
And I'm guessing we should probably know how to ask about schedules too.
Exactly, exactly. You can say, what time is the next train? Or, how often do the buses run? And something that's really saved me many times is knowing how to ask, is this the right platform? Because, sometimes those station signs can be really confusing.
So, what about when we actually get to our hotel? That's usually the next big challenge, right?
Oh, yes, yes. And you know what's really interesting? The check-in process can be super smooth if you just know a few key phrases, you know what I mean? The first thing you absolutely need to know is, I have a reservation under, and then your name.
What if there's some kind of problem with the reservation?
Right, right. So in that case, you might need to say something like, there seems to be a mistake, or I booked a double room, not a single. And what's really important is knowing how to ask about the facilities, what time is breakfast served, or is there Wi-Fi in the rooms?
And what about when we need something specific for our room?
Oh, that's such an important point. There are these really useful phrases you'll definitely need. So you might say, could I have some extra towels? Or the air conditioning isn't working. And sometimes you might need to say, could you send someone to fix whatever's not working? You know what I mean?
Um, what about those situations where maybe the room isn't quite what we expected?
Yes, yes. So this happens more often than you'd think, right? You might need to say, this room is too noisy, or could I possibly change rooms? And what's really important is being polite but firm, So you could say something like, I'm sorry, but this isn't what I booked, or could you help me resolve this issue?
And when it's time to leave, What are the important phrases to know?
So checking out is actually pretty straightforward. The main things you need to know are, I'd like to check out, and could I have my bill please? And don't forget this super useful one. Could you call me a taxi? Because, like, you might need help with your next destination, right? Oh, and always remember to ask, could you store my luggage? If you're leaving later in the day, you know what I mean?
So, what about restaurants? I always get a bit nervous about ordering food in another language.
Oh my goodness, yes. And, and you know what's really amazing about this topic? Like once you have these key phrases down, it completely transforms your whole dining experience, you know what I mean?
What are the first things we should know when we walk in?
So the very first thing you'll need is like, table for two, please, or whatever number you need. And what's super important is knowing how to ask, do you have a reservation system? Because, some places, they get really packed and you absolutely need to book ahead, right?
And once we're seated, what then?
Right. So this is where it gets really interesting. You'll want to say, could I see the menu, please? And here's something super helpful. Always learn how to say, could you recommend something special? Because, like, that's how you get the really good stuff. You know what I mean?
What about people with dietary restrictions? That must be really important to get right.
Oh, that's such a crucial point. Like, you definitely need to know phrases such as, I'm allergic to, or I'm vegetarian/vegan. And what's really important is being able to ask, does this contain? Followed by whatever you need to avoid, right? Because, like, food allergies are super serious, you know?
And when it comes to actually placing the order.
So there are these really essential phrases you'll need, like, I'd like thee, or could I have? And don't forget these super useful ones. Could you make it less spicy? Or, is this dish very hot? And sometimes you might need more of something, so learning, could I have some more water, is totally essential. You know what I mean?
What if we need to get the server's attention?
Yes. So this is really interesting because, like, different cultures have different ways of doing this, right? But generally, saying, excuse me, works well. And then you might need phrases like, the bill please, or could we have the check? And here's a super helpful tip. Always learn how to say, could I have a box to take this home? Because, like, sometimes the portions are huge, you know what I mean?
Now, what about those moments when things don't go exactly as planned, like emergencies and stuff?
Oh my goodness, yes. And this is like super important because, when you really need help, you need to know exactly what to say, right? The absolute first thing you need to know is how to say help or emergency. And then immediately follow it with, I need a doctor, or call the police. You know what I mean?
That sounds really crucial. What about less serious situations where we just need directions?
Right. So getting around is something you'll need like all the time. The basics are super simple, like where is, or how do I get to? And what's really helpful is knowing how to ask, could you write that down? Because sometimes, understanding directions in another language can be really tricky, right?
And if we're lost?
Oh, this happens to everyone, like all the time. And what's really important is being able to say, I'm lost, or I can't find my hotel. And here's something super useful. Learning how to say, could you show me on the map? Because, like, visual directions are sometimes way easier than verbal ones, you know what I mean?
What about if something gets stolen?
Yes. This is such an important point. You'll need to know phrases like, my wallet was stolen, or I lost my passport. And what's really crucial is being able to say, I need to go to the police station, or where is the nearest embassy? Because, like, these are situations where you absolutely need to be clear about what happened, right?
And medical emergencies?
Oh gosh, yes. And this is where being really specific helps so much. You need to know how to say things like, I'm not feeling well, or I need medication. And what's super important is being able to describe your symptoms, Like, I have a fever, or I'm allergic to this medication. Because, like, when it comes to health stuff, you really need to get the message across clearly. Do you know what I mean?
Before we wrap up, Peter, what about, cultural considerations when using these phrases?
Oh my goodness, yes. And this is something that's like super fascinating because, it's not just about knowing the words, right? It's about drati. And this is really important. Understanding how to use them in different cultures. Like in some places, being super direct can come across as, rude, while in others, it's totally expected. Do you know what I mean?
Second paragraph in the dialogue.
In this episode of QuickSpeak English, we're diving headfirst into the amazing world of travel English. I got something super cool for you, Lily. A whole bunch of phrases to make any adventure smoother, you know?
Oh, I'm so excited. And I just really liked the idea of this episode. Travel English is like totally crucial. It's not just about knowing the words, right? It's about knowing how to use them in real situations. And I've got tons of tips and tricks. First point, getting around. Second point, ordering food. Third point, dealing with emergencies, and so on and so forth. Lots and lots of really useful stuff.
Okay, so like getting around, what are some key phrases there? I'm thinking, asking for directions and all that.
Absolutely. So you'll want to know how to say, excuse me, could you tell me how to get to, then you could, name the place. And it's really important to be polite. And phrases like, thank you, you're very kind, and I appreciate your help go a long way. And even if you don't understand everything perfectly, just smiling and showing you're trying really helps. People are usually really understanding, And don't forget to use gestures. They're like super helpful.
Yeah, gestures are amazing, especially when you're lost for words. So what about ordering food? That's always a bit of a challenge for me.
Oh, it's a fun challenge. And it can be surprisingly simple. First thing is knowing basic food words, obviously, and maybe some common phrases like I'd like, can I have, the check, please? And don't be afraid to point. Pointing at pictures on the menu is perfectly acceptable, especially if you're not sure about pronunciation. And then if you have any dietary restrictions like allergies, it's super important to be clear about that. You could say something like I'm allergic to, or I don't eat. And they're usually very accommodating. They really want you to enjoy your meal.
That's reassuring because I always feel a bit awkward ordering food in another language. So what about emergencies? Like what if you get lost or, something unexpected happens?
Right. Emergencies are the most important part. It's really, really crucial to know a few key phrases. First, help is obviously essential. And if you need to call the police, ambulance, or fire department, you need the numbers, and you should write them down before you go. And it's also helpful to know how to say things like, I'm lost, I need a doctor, or I've been robbed. And if you're feeling completely overwhelmed, look for someone who speaks your language, or try to use a translation app. Most importantly, stay calm, deep breaths, and you will be okay.
Deep breaths. I like that. It's easy to panic, right? Okay, so let's say I'm going to Italy. What are some basic Italian phrases I should know beyond just hello and thank you?
Well, buongiorno is good morning, buonasera is good evening, and ciao is both hello and goodbye. And you definitely need to know how to say please and thank you. Those are like the most important ones, and they'll get you far. And then if you want to ask for directions, you could say scusi, dov'è, which means excuse me, where is? And don't forget the all-important prego, which means you're welcome. And it shows that you are really trying to speak the language. People really appreciate the effort.
This is all super helpful, Lily. I'm already feeling more confident. Do you have any other quick tips before we wrap this up? Any little hacks or secrets to make travel smoother?
Oh, absolutely. Download a translation app before you leave. That is like a lifesaver. And learn a few basic words in the local language, even if it's just hello, thank you, and please. It shows you're making an effort, And pack lightly. The less you have to carry around, the easier your travels will be. This isn't rocket science. And don't forget to have fun. Travel should be an enjoyable experience. Seriously, just relax and enjoy your travels.
Wow, that's fantastic advice and a great reminder to keep things simple, I think we covered a lot of ground today in QuickSpeak English. Thanks so much, Lily. This was super informative. We've tackled everything from asking for directions to handling emergencies, and it's all going to make my next trip so much more relaxed.
My pleasure. And remember, practice makes perfect. And don't be afraid to make mistakes. It's all part of the learning process, and everyone appreciates the effort. It's like trying to bake a cake. Sometimes it's a bit messy, but the final product is always worth it. And you know, even if your cake falls flat sometimes, you still get delicious cake crumbs. Ha!
A. Love the cake analogy. Thanks again, Lily, for sharing your expertise. And to all our listeners, happy travels. Don't forget to subscribe to QuickSpeak English for more helpful tips and insights. We'll see you next time.